Hello aspirants, welcome to PW OnlyIAS English channel. I'm here Harpreet Singh again with a daily analysis of the Hindu from 16 September 2024. Let's begin the analysis. The articles that we have taken for today's discussion are: first, the Nipah virus; second, the Central Information Commission; third, the one concept of one nation, one election. From the editorial, we have taken the District Mineral Foundation. And another very interesting topic that is mentioned in the opinion is rural-urban continuum, a very important topic which we study in the topic of geography. Let's begin today's analysis. The first topic that has been present or mentioned in today's newspaper is regarding the Nipah deaths confirmed in Malappuram. 150 contacts asked to isolate themselves. Now, when you're preparing for civil services, this becomes very important not only for your mains examination but also from your preliminary examination. We have seen the occurrence of COVID virus. So the government is always proactive when they hear about or study about such viruses. Now, let's understand what Nipah virus basically is. Nipah virus is a zoonotic virus. What does it mean? It basically means transmitted from animals to humans. It is an RNA virus. Next, it was first appeared in a village in Malaysia. The name of the village is Sungai Nipah, and because of the name Nipah, this virus basically got its name. A brief idea about the virus. Now let us move ahead. When we talk about this virus was basically first appeared among the domestic pigs in Malaysia. It is not only confined to the pigs, it was later on found in other domesticated animals like even sheep also. So we see that first appeared in domestic pigs in Malaysia and also been found among several other domesticated animals. Now, how does the transmission takes place? That is again very, very important. One mode of transmission is the direct contact. Direct contact with the infected animal such as bats or pigs, particularly through their bodily fluids, like for that matter, urine. So first is the direct contact with the infected animal, bat or pigs. Next, consumption of contaminated food. This sometimes happens by consuming fruits which are infected, because those were eaten by the animals and the saliva basically touched, or you come in contact with the saliva of the infected animals. So that is why we say while eating fruits which is contaminated by the saliva of the infected bats, that can also lead to a human being being infected by this virus. Let's move ahead. There are certain symptoms. Now these symptoms vary depending upon the severity, right? Depending upon the severity, you can experience fever, headache, muscle ache, nausea, scratchy throat, dizziness, drowsiness, seizures, even swelling of the brain in more severe cases. Even the swelling of the brain has been observed. So these are the various symptoms that one experiences if someone is having or being infected by Nipah virus. And let's move ahead. The second topic that we are discussing is with respect to Central Information Commission asked the railways to disclose a list of staff with disabilities. Now, the important thing over here is CIC. You generally read this topic when you are studying the Indian polity. When such bodies come in the newspapers or mentioned in the newspaper, it becomes very important for you to just revise it or know them. Why? Because the examiner who is preparing your paper for the mains examination or the prelims examination generally comes across such bodies when he or she is reading a newspaper and picks up and creates a question. So we need to know brief about the Central Information Commission also. Now it is a statutory body. That means it is created because of an act, right? Statutory body set up under the Right to Information Act 2005. Now see, CIC acts upon the complaints from citizens who have not been able to submit information request to the public information officers under the Act. So now it is basically resolving the disputes of the people with respect to the information, right, under the RTI Act. Now, having a brief idea about Central Information Commission, let us move ahead and know a little bit more details regarding that. It was established in October 2005, as we mentioned, under the RTI Act. Next is members. It has a chief election commissioner, along with it 10 other information commissioners appointed by the President of India. Next is, what is a tenure? Tenure is 5 years till 65 years, whichever is earlier. Next is jurisdiction. Over all central public authorities are under the jurisdiction of CIC. When we move ahead, status. As you all know, it is a statutory body. It is not a constitutional body. Please remember that. It is not a constitutional body. It is a statutory body because it has been formed by the Right to Information Act 2005. Removal. The information commissioners or the chief information commissioner can be removed by the president under his hand and seal in case of or the grounds of misbehavior, or in case the information commissioner resigns it. So these are the certain information that you should know when you're reading the article, because these are the points where the examiner or the question paper setter can basically pick up and create a question out of it. Now let's begin. Let's move ahead and see the other dimensions. A very, very, very important topic that is mentioned in today's newspaper. It basically says one nation, one election will be implemented in the current term. That means the government is of the view of implementation of the concept of one nation, one election. Now, as an aspirant who's preparing for this, for the civil services, you should be very clear what this concept is, what are the pros, what are the cons, what's various dimensions associated with the concept of one nation, one election, which is ONOE. Now, what does this basically mean? See, it refers to the proposal of conducting simultaneous elections for, let us say, the Lok Sabha, state legislature, and along with them the local bodies, that is the municipalities and the panchayats. That means the Lok Sabha, the members of the Lok Sabha, the directly elected members, then the state legislative assemblies, along with it municipalities and the panchayats. So all the threes over here, if the elections are conducted simultaneously, in that case we are talking about a simultaneous election, which will basically lead to what? Election taking place at one time and all the members being selected at one time. Now when we talk about being selected at one time, we often get confused how this is going to take place. Now I've drawn a brief diagram over here to show you what it actually means. Now supposingly there's a person A. Now he goes to the polling booth to cast a vote. Now under normal circumstances, you will be seeing a EVM along with a VVPAT machine and you will cast your vote. Let us say you are going to cast an election to select your member of parliament for the Lok Sabha. You go there, there's a name list there is mentioned, along with it the symbol of the political party, and you press the button. In this case, you will be having a VVPAT and EVM for, let us say, election of the member of parliament. Along with that, there will be again another EVM and VVPAT where you will be selecting your MLA. Again, there will be one more EVM and VVPAT where you will be choosing the, let us say, the ward member or the panchayat member. So whatever, that is regarding the local elections that are taking place. So in this case, when you are going there, you are basically electing or casting a vote for central elections, that is the union election for selecting of MPs, MLAs, as well as the local panchayats or the municipality. This is the concept of simultaneous election, when every booth similar thing would be repeated, right? So simultaneously election is taking place. Now what is important is, after understanding the concept, what are the pros, what are the cons, and is this concept really new? Please understand, this concept is not new. When the elections took place for the first time in 1951-52, we realized that there were simultaneous elections. So this concept of one nation, one election is not new to India. See, this concept is not new to our country. Simultaneous elections were held in 1951-52, even in 1957, even in 1962, and also in 1967. So there were simultaneous elections for the selection of the member of parliament as well as the members of the state legislature, simultaneous election for all these elections. But later on, what happened? In 1968 and 69, we saw various premature dissolution of the state legislative assemblies that basically broke the cycle of the simultaneous elections. So we can't say that this is a new concept. No. Earlier also, the framers or the makers of the constitution had this in mind. That is why this concept of simultaneous election existed there. So this is not a new concept. So this is one you should know when you are studying this topic. Let's move ahead. Now let's see what are the benefits when we talk about simultaneous elections. See, first is a cost reduction. See, it could save money by eliminating the need for separate elections. Now we have election, let us say, for selections of the members of the Lok Sabha. Then after some time, you have the elections for, let us say, in a particular state for the state legislature. Then you have the panchayats and other elections. So we see repeatedly that same activity going on. That tends to escalate the cost a lot. So if it is happening at the same time as shown in this particular diagram, all the three elections at the various levels are taking place at one time. This will reduce the cost tremendously. That is why the first topic that we have taken is, the first fact is cost reduction. Second, focus on the long-term governance. Now, various reports, even the Law Commission has mentioned that generally what happens that if we have repeated elections, various political parties and even the political members or the politicians tend to focus on, let us say, vote bank politics aspect, where short-term benefits are seen rather than the long-term benefits of the country. Sometimes it happens. So what happens, even the Law Commission mentions that in case of a simultaneous election, the focus would be more on the long-term goals. It encourages politicians to prioritize long-term governance over the short-term gains. Next, increased voter turnout. Why? Just now you saw the diagram of the VVPAT and the VVM. Just imagine if you have an election in 1 month, let us say for the Lok Sabha, next month you have for the state legislature, next month you have for the local bodies in a particular state. Now, as a voter, one might go and cast a vote for, let us say, selection of the member of the Lok Sabha, that is for the member of parliament, but repeated elections tends to create a concept which is known as voter fatigue. Fatigue over here means getting tired of repeated elections. And what happens? The voter turnout starts decreasing. If you have elections, let us say once in 5 years, obviously the participation rate and the voter turnout will increase. That is why voter turnout can be increased or have a higher voter turnout in case there is simultaneous election. Next, level playing field. Now, how this is a level playing field, please understand. Supposing there is a small party. Now, small party does not have the capability to spend a lot during the election process. If they are, let us say, participating at the national level also, state level and the local bodies. So when you have one election taking place in one time, it is more manageable. That is why it is said the smaller parties can compete more effectively with larger ones due to the reduced overall expenditure. So there is a more level playing field even for the smaller parties if simultaneous elections takes place. Let us move on to the further aspects. Efficient use of security forces. Now imagine you have the national elections taking place, the state and the local elections also. Under normal circumstances, when the separate elections are taking place, the mobilization of the forces have to be done on a continuous basis from one part to another, from one part to another. This takes place and there is no proper or efficient utilization of the resources. Now, of the forces over here. Now, supposingly, if the election is taking place only in one time, so the forces would be required once during the time when the election is taking place, not throughout the year, because elections keep on taking place throughout the year in various states. So this is one of the important aspects. Next is curb horse trading. Horse trading, that is, means jumping from one party to the another, because we know, because the election is going to take place once in 5 years, and that will be along with the union and the state elections. So it can reduce the number of jumpings of the various people from one party to another. So this can also be observed, that has been mentioned by the report by the Law Commission. And let us see what are the issues or problems that are present when we talk about this particular topic. See, synchronization challenges. Synchronize, that means bringing the elections together right now, which is not. See, difficult in a diverse democracy like India, particularly if the government lose confidence in their assemblies. So that means, again, supposingly there's a no confidence motion passed in, let us say, a state legislature. Now, what is the probability how the government is going to go on? That is, again, various suggestions have been there by various committees, by even by the Law Commission. But again, that would create a lot of problem. Whether the, let us say, the governor under the president rule is going to rule, or what should be the conditions. So, bringing in synchronization, bringing in consensus at present by the various state assemblies is a very big concern. So, that is why we say synchronization or solving the issue in case the election has taken place and certain state legislature in which a no confidence motion is passed against that state legislature, and that means the government loses confidence. It has no right to rule in a state. Who is going to govern the state at that time? So there have been various queries regarding that. This is one of the major one. So how to deal with that particular problem? Next is federal concern. Now see, one nation, one election clashes with the concept of federalism, in which Article 1 mentions India as a union of states. India as a union of states. Simultaneous election go against the autonomy of the state. This is again a major concern, which basically is going against the federal spirit as per the many states who have raised their opinion against the one nation, one election concept. Next, Article 3671. Now, 371 gives special provisions to the states. So, the problem is that in this particular federal issue, we see that states have their own existence. You cannot tell them that you have to come in accordance with the elections schedule that is mandated under the concept of one nation, one election, where your elections will take place along with the central government. So that means what happens currently, if certain states are being governed, right, 2 to 3 years are left for their tenure to get over. And if the concept of one nation, one election comes, so their tenure will have to be reduced, right? Their tenure will have to be reduced. Let us say that what we generally say 5 years. Now let us say 2 years have been completed, 3 years are left, and one nation, one election comes. So they say we are losing 3 years. If supposingly the other government comes, the states will say that this is against the federal spirit of the constitution, which is an integral part, or that is a basic structure. So this is one of the questions that have been raised against the concept of one nation, one election. Now, when we move ahead, we see it may lead to a biased structure. How a biased structure? There have been certain studies which say that if the elections take place simultaneously, there's a greater probability that a same political party might come into power at the state and as well as the center. Let's see. The IDFC Institute 2015 study says that 77% chance that a winning political party or alliance will secure victories both in the Lok Sabha and the Assembly elections if they are held simultaneously. Now, there is a concern. Why I tell you is, people very often are not able to differentiate between the elections, whether it is for the state or whether it is for the center. We talk about literacy, we know about digital literacy, but remember, political literacy is also a major concept which is lacking among large number of people. They might not know when they are casting the vote, this is whether for the prime minister, whether it is for the chief minister. These are also confusions that we come across. So what happens is that when a person is going and casting the vote, there's a tendency to vote for the similar political party because they're not able to differentiate between an issue that is concerning a central government and another issue that is concerning the state, because they are not aware of the union list, the concept of state list. These are the concepts that they are not aware of. So that is why there's a greater chance, 77% chance, that a similar political party will win the central elections as well, or the union elections as well as state assemblies. But this is again a concern. That is why the state governments have raised or voiced their opinion against the concept of one nation, one election. Again, it not only raises a concern with respect to the bias structure, but also the federal polity. When we move ahead, cost implications. Please remember, this is again one of the topics, though it has certain fixed cost and one-time cost, but it will be large. How? Because did you see that when I made this diagram, there is a escalation, or let us say the number of VVPATs and the EVMs that are required will shoot up exponentially. Along with it, the cost that comes is going to be humongous, because everywhere, let us say one VVPAT or EVM used to be there, but they're going to be three EVM and VVPATs. And remember, when you talk about one polling booth, you have 2 to 3 other VVMs and EVPAT as a contingency measure, so that some problem arises so they can replace it. So you can imagine the level of cost or the cost escalations that will take place. So this is again a major concern when we talk about the simultaneous election taking place. So this is one of the disadvantages of problematic situation. Now when we move ahead, what are the legal concerns? Now there are legal concerns or legal issues also. In one of the famous cases, the Bommai case, the Supreme Court emphasizes the independent and constitutional existence of the state. Now this can be taken as an extrapolation of the federal polity. Yes, now this is also an angle why we are mentioning it over here, because the Supreme Court has also emphasized that states are independent and constitutional existence. Now, cutting short of their tenure, or let us say if they lose confidence, who will rule the state during that time, all these concerns are basically going against the independent existence of the state. As we said, supposingly 2 years tenure of a state has taken place and a simultaneous elections were held. Now, the simultaneous election means that after 5 years only the election will take place, and after 2 years we see that there is a no confidence motion passed against a particular state government, and what will happen? Who is going to rule for the remaining 3 years? Will the president rule be there, or will they continue in spite of the no confidence motion being passed? That is again a very problematic situation. Under normal circumstances, if a no confidence motion is passed against a ruling government in a state, again the re-election would take place, right? And a new government would be formed. But if not so, because under the concept of one nation, one election, we see that the elections take place after what? A tenure of 5 years. Now, this is going to impact the constitutional existence of a state and its independence. This is also stated in the SR Bommai case by the Supreme Court. That is why this concern again creates problems. Impact on the regional party. Again, as we saw in the IDFC report also, we saw that it tends to favor larger national parties and potentially disadvantages the regional parties. Why? Because see, a national party has a greater impact from a visible point of view to the audience. Now, when the people are voting, they are not able to differentiate, as I mentioned earlier, between the topics that concern the nation as a whole and the topic that concerns the local level elections, or for that matter, the state election. And that is why what the favor is, the national or the larger parties tend to garner votes and come into power. So that is why many states have again raised their queries or opinions against the one nation, one election concept. Now, please understand, it also involves various amendments to the constitution also if you want to carry on with the concept of one nation, one election. It is not that a simple practice. So see, Article 83, if the one nation, one election concept is carried forward, let us say it has to be implemented. So these amendments to these articles will also need to be necessarily be taken. Now, with respect to the mains examination, also remember, definitely this question is very important, but for preliminary also they can be asking you questions with respect to what you have studied, also with respect to certain articles. For example, they might mention, if the concept of one nation, one election has to be implemented, which among the following articles necessarily need to be amended for the process to be in the constitutional spirit? So 2 or 3 articles can be mentioned, some other article can be mentioned, and you have to choose the correct one. Article 83, it is related to the duration of the houses of the parliament. Article 85, it deals with the session of the parliament, prorogation and resolution. And these 2 articles with respect to the state legislature. 172 deals with the duration of the state legislature, and 174 deals with the session, prorogation and resolution of the state legislature. So all these 4 articles need to be amended for us to implement the concept of one nation, one election. Now let's move ahead. There are certain bodies, why when you're writing the answers for the mains examination, it is very important that you can quote that there are certain bodies or important bodies who have favored the concept of one nation, one election. So The Law Commission report of 170th report in 1999 had also talked about that we need the concept of one nation, one election. Even the 255th report of 2015 also raised the similar topic. We saw that National Commission for the Review of the Working of the Constitution 2002 also advocated for the concept of one nation, one election. Parliamentary Standing Committee report on 2015 had also mentioned that there is a need for one nation, one election. Working paper of the Niti Aayog 2017 also mentions that it is time to have the concept of one nation, one election being implemented in the country. So, as you see over here, we have the pros, we have the cons, we know what is one nation, one election. We have various bodies who are saying that there is a need. But if you want to implement it, it is very, very important that the states need to be taken into consensus, all the stakeholders need to be consulted, and a proper decision needs to come. Yes, obviously it has its own benefits. As the education literacy of the people is increasing, people are also now slowly able to differentiate between what concerns the national level topics and as well as the state level topics. So we should, because it is being mandated by also so many, so we could, when you're writing your answers, you can say it could be taken forward, but based on the consensus of the state governments also. So let's move ahead. Now, this is a very important topic. A human touch to India's minerals ecosystem with respect to the editorial. Now, please remember, over here, when we talk about what is the core or the crux of this particular topic, it has been written by the Union Minister of Coals and Mines. He basically states that the Mines and Mineral Development and Regulation Act has been a boon for the country, through which, let us say, various bodies, let us say like District Mineral Foundation has been found, which is basically helping the people who are impacted by the mines or the mineral activities and their development, education, and various other dimensions. So he's basically trying to tell how a proper regulation of the mining sector can be a boon or beneficial for the country as a whole, and how the District Mineral Foundation, which is formed under this act, can be beneficial. He has also mentioned about the schemes of Pradhan Mantri Khanij Kshetra Kalyan Yojana. And overall, when we see all this article, this is a basically mention that how inclusive development and how the benefits are being reaped by the mining sector and towards the development of the people as a whole also. So when we read, there are various examples given. What we need to do is, what I have done, I have used this article along with certain other knowledge that you should know. Like, for example, the act is mentioned, the concept of District Mineral Foundation is mentioned. Pradhan Mantri Khanij Kshetra Kalyan Yojana is mentioned. Now, these things becomes very important, not only from the prelims aspect, but also from the mains aspect. So we need to see certain dimensions when we are dealing or studying this. Let's see. See, because the act is mentioned, we need to know that the Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Act 1957 was there. Now let us put it 2015, just a minute, 2015. Now please understand, Mines and Mineral Development and Regulation Act 2015 basically amends this act. Mines and Development Regulation Act of 1957. This act, as mentioned by the Honorable Minister, amends the MMRD Act of 1957. So what MMRD Act basically concerns or deals with? It regulates the mining sector in India and specifies the requirements of obtaining and granting leases for mining operations. Why the Act of 2015 is specifically mentioned? The reason is that because District Mineral Foundation was created under this particular act, so this act of this year becomes important, because this act basically amends MMRD Act of 1957 and creates various bodies and certain amendments. So we'll see certain aspects of this act and focus on the District Mineral Foundation also. To see the highlights of the act, the states the maximum area for mining, that is for one mining lease, the maximum area is 1 kilometer square. This act basically, under this act 2015, states what is the lease period should be. For the coal and lignite, the act says that the maximum is 30 years, minimum is 20 years, and further renewal can be for another 20 years maximum. For other minerals other than the lignite, coal and atomic minerals, other than these three, lease can be granted for 50 years. So This is something that is present or mentioned in the MMRD Act of 2015. Again repeating, for coal and lignite, the maximum period is 30 years, minimum is 20 years, and a renewal, again a renewal can be done for maximum of 20 years. Other than coal, lignite or the atomic minerals, the lease can be granted for a period of 50 years. So this is something that is mentioned. When we move ahead, we see all leases to be granted through the concept of auction, competitive bidding, that is even e-auction. Now comes the important thing, institutions that are established under this. Though the focus is on this, I've mentioned this particular body also because it is also established by the Act. Creates the District Mineral Foundation, DMF. What does it mean? It is to be established by the state government. Please remember, this can be asked in your paper. It might state that the DMF is established by the union government. No, it is established by the state government because this is present in every district where such activities are taking place. It is to be established by the state government for the benefit of the persons in districts affected by mining related operations. So, one can be, is it established in every district? Not necessary, because only in those districts affected by mining related activities. So, that means for the people who are, let us say, displaced or being affected by the mining activities, this District Mineral Foundation is being established so that they can benefit. How they are going to benefit, we'll see that. So they can benefit, or this foundation will work for them. Thing that comes from where is it? It is going to get the money, because if it aims to help the people who are affected, please remember, the licensees and the leaseholders shall pay the District Mineral Foundation an amount not more than 1/3 of the royalty prescribed by the central government. So now this becomes a source through which the money comes into the District Mineral Foundation. Now this money would be utilized for the people who are affected by the mining or mining related activities. Now we'll see a scheme also after this, but this is the basic concept that you should know. One more body that is established is National Mineral Exploration Trust. This is established by the central government, not by the state government. Please remember that. It is established by the central government for regional and detailed mine exploration. For regional and detailed mine related explorations. Do you realize that the certain duties entrusted to the state government, certain to the central government, and a cordial relation has to be established for a correct and proper implementation. Now please understand, we just now saw a particular scheme being mentioned here. Pradhan Mantri Khanat Kshetra Kalyan Yojana, PMKKY. Now what happens under this is, the District Mineral Foundation shall use the funds which it has received. Now what happens is, under the scheme, this particular amount which has been received under the DMF shall be utilized as per the guidelines that have been given by the central government. Now please understand, you receive the amount because of the royalties and 1/3 amount that has been fixed by the central government. That money comes into the District Mineral Foundation. Now how it has to be used, this scheme is basically an umbrella for that. Now how the money is going to be used are by the guidelines given by the central government. Now what the central government is saying, it says, let us say, at least 70% of the funds should be used in high priority areas, like let us say drinking water, solving the problem of pollution, education, and all these things. The remaining 30% in physical infrastructure, irrigation, energy, and watershed for the people who are affected by the mining or mining related activities. So now do you realize that in the article it mentions in the last about the concept of cooperative federalism. So you see DMF under the state government, established by the state government, guidelines being given by the central government. Again, you use all these areas in which you want to implement. So there is a, let us say, work of the central and the state government. Both are working together for, let us say, the benefit of the people who are impacted by the mining related activities. So it is a representation of the concept of cooperative federalism also. That is why the editorial here very categorically mentioned advantages of the convergence. Do you realize the scheme and the DMF, they are working, how it is working? See, when you see over here, the scheme has been launched by the central government, where the DMF, which has the funds which it receives, which is created by the body created by the state government. Now we see involvement of the district government, the state government, the central government. So we see a sense of cooperative federalism. So this convergence basically is overall helping the people who are impacted by the mining related activities. So this is what the editorial is completely about, which we have covered in a very holistic manner. Though the details of the schemes are not necessarily mentioned in the editorial. When you read the editorial, you get a brief idea, because this is basically praising the MMRD Act and how DMF has been basically useful for the people, and how the convergences that are taking place are helpful for the people as a whole. That is why, please, this becomes very, very important. It can be asked in your prelims, it can be asked in your mains. The minute details that are mentioned over here with respect to DMF formed by state government or by the central government, NMMT by formed by central government or state government, these questions can be asked. Clear? Let's move ahead. Let's move to the last topic of today's discussion. This is realizing the rural-urban continuum or urban-rural continuum, one of the same thing. When I talk about rural-urban continuum, the word continuum means continuity. Because see, this article over here, in the opinion, mentions a lot of things. We'll have to go to the basics also to understand it. But for the beginning, the word continuum means continuity. Then comes rural-urban continuum, or we can say rural-urban continuity. This is a basic meaning. We will understand this after this. Please understand. Now coming to the article, what the article talks about. See, the article over here is a planner, an urban planner. He basically says that with time we see that people in the urban regions are going to increase, right? If I take a stat, in 2011, 32% of the people are living in the urban areas. That means 32% urbanization with respect to the population. Now, by 2050, greater than 60% of the people, according to the Ministry of Urban Affairs and Housing, then more than 60% will be staying in the urban regions. Now, this requires a proper planning of the urban regions, because haphazard planning will create a chaos in the urban regions and various associated issues will come. Over here, he says, in this light, when we are seeing that the rate of urbanizations are increasing, that means people moving from the rural regions to the, let us say, the urban regions are going to increase. Now everybody is not going to stay in the urban region because it is very expensive. They might be staying in certain regions away from the metropolitan or the city region. So we need to understand that the concept of rural-urban continuum becomes important. But the question that arises is, what is rural-urban or urban-rural continuum? Let's see this. Please see this diagram. It is an interesting diagram. Hopefully my drawing does impress you. But if it doesn't, then also it is understandable. See, rural-urban continuity or continuum basically means a continuity from the village and the city. Do you realize, if you see, this is a city and this is a village, right? Now, this city will have various characteristics that are associated with the city. In a way, let us say, it is going to have its own economy, that is urban economy, might be focused on, let us say, the tertiary sector or even a secondary sector. It will have its own social life, for that matter, let us say more nuclear families, possibly the rate of divorces might also be high, and so many social factors associated with that. Let us say the women participation rate in the economy might be high. So there are various social cultural factors that this particular city might be having, along with the way that it is being planned. Next comes a village. Let us say a group of hamlets are there. Now it will have its own social structure. Let us say the importance of caste system might be here. Let us say the agrarian economy is going to be predominant. Let us say the participation of the women in the economy might not be so high. So all these characteristics also come. Now please realize, these are two units. Now these two units, between these units you'll be realizing there are a set of things that are happening. As you get closer to this city, you'll be having this region. Let us say these are two places. This region will be having, let us say, more of characteristics of a city, less of a village. But as you keep moving towards the village area, over here, the regions that are closer to the village will have more of the village-like characteristics and less of a city-like characteristics. So this particular region is a continuum or a thing that is basically linking the city and the village, where you're not able to differentiate whether it is a city, whether it is a village, because it is having both similar characteristics, or let us say mingling of the characteristics of the city and the village. Now understand this. Urban rural continuum or rural urban continuum is a concept that recognizes that distinction between the rural and urban areas is not always clear or sharp. That means over here you will see that you cannot distinguish whether it is completely a village, completely an urban region, because this is a city or an urban region, this is a village region where you can distinguish, but not in this region which is connecting the urban and the rural area. So we can say it is basically the merging, that is the merging is taking place, because as a city is expanding, it will later on one or the other way, it is going to cover the village also over here. So it is process of merging also of the village within the city. Secondly, the characteristics over here cannot be completely defined whether it is village or city. In this portion, let us say, which is closer to the city, more city-like characteristics and some lesser of rural characteristics. As you come here, more of rural characteristics, less of city characteristics. I have used the color coding also in a similar manner so that you can understand. This is called urban-rural continuum. Now, the people also residing here will also have their economy and let us say social and cultural aspects, which we are going to be a mix of some of city and some of the village. Now, why this topic is mentioned in today's opinion? The reason behind it is that we have a lot of problem with respect to the policy making and let us say urban planning. Over here, current policy framework, so that means there are certain issues with the policies that India has. Those concerns have been raised by the person who is writing this. Along with it, there are issues with the governance model. So we are taking both these dimensions over here under the policy framework and issues and understanding what it basically says. Let's move ahead. After having understood what is rural continuum or rural urban continuum, see, what does it mention? It basically says that there is over centralization of finances. That means the local bodies do not have enough money. So that is also mentioned in the 13th Finance Commission. So what do you realize? When the local bodies do not have money, they are dependent on, let us say, the state governments or even the central government when they will give the finances. So they are not able to plan well. So leaving around, why this becomes a problem? They are not able to plan properly over here. So leave alone the planning of the regions that are extending or close to the village network or village setup. They will not be able to plan it also properly. So lack of finances, as mentioned over here, is one of the major concerns. Second, issues with the grants linked with a centrally sponsored scheme. Centrally sponsored schemes are those schemes in which the implementation basically involves a contribution from the central government and also the state governments. Let us say 60% contribution made by the state government, central government, and 40% by the state government, and so on and so forth, depending upon what the ratio has been fixed. Generally, it is 60-40. Now, what happens is, see a case study. Issues with the grants that are linked. There are certain grants that are linked to the centrally sponsored scheme. So what happens? A case is given. If there is rise in the property taxes in the cities, then there should be proportional rise in the state GST also. If there is an increase in the property taxes in the city, there should be rise in the state GST also, because there is rise in the property tax in city. But what happens is, if there is no linkage, between these two, what will happen? Most towns are at the risk of losing the money grants, because the money grants are linked with both of these things. Because property tax is increasing, but the state GST is low. So the grants that would be provided are in proportion with the state GST over here. So now when that is not high, the money grants that would be given to the state will also be low. So that means there is issue with the schemes that are basically being implemented at a state level as well as a central level. So if the grants linked to the centrally sponsored schemes or the issue prevailing over here is not rectified, then what happens is that we tend to lose a lot of money. Local bodies or the states tend to lose a lot of money with respect to the grants. So this is second issue that has been pointed in the editorial or the opinion. Third is the flagship schemes like Swachh Bharat Mission and Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, that is the Amrut. Now there are issues, please understand. These schemes miss the concept of rural-urban continuum. How? See, supposingly this is a region which is urban, supposingly these are small villages, or this is the continuum part. Contiguous also means adjoining. Areas do not qualify under the funding of Amrit. That means the scheme does not mention anything about the closer or near or adjoining areas, how they have to be developed. It only mentions with respect to, let us say, a particular city or a town, or let us say rejuvenation or urban transformation of a particular city or town. It does not mention about the continuum region being developed as a part of a whole development process. So what happens is that continuous areas, that means these continuum areas, let us say this is a city, these are certain rural regions. If I have to develop as a whole under the Amrut scheme, you will not get the funding, because there is no point that is mentioned over here in Amrut scheme that says continuous or adjoining areas. In case you say that along with the city, I want to develop this particular continuum region, you will not be getting any fundings under the scheme, because continuous or adjoining area do not qualify for the funding under the Amrut scheme. So that means we have excluded the concept of let us say the urban rural continuum region from the planning process itself. Another example, you realize that Swachh Bharat Mission urban is there, Swachh Bharat Mission rural is there, but we do not have anything for the people or planning process with respect to the continuum that is there. So what happens? The condition or the people who are residing here or the development as a whole that should take place is not inclusive in this case. So we in our schemes and policies have neglected the urban rural continuum area, which should be developed in order to have a proper development or the regional development of an area. Now this is very important from the perspective for the people, obviously for the general studies, also for the people who have geography optional. This concept becomes very, very important. Another issue is governance related issue. Please understand, governance related issue comes that strong district planning committees are is what expected when we talk about the planning aspect, where we assume that the district bureaucracy will be subordinate to the district planning committees, because a lot of people or stakeholders would be involved. But what has happened actually is the district bureaucracy has hijacked the district planning committees, and they tend to do things as per their own whims and fancies, which is basically was not the expectation when the district planning committees were formed. So what we advise is that the district planning committees should be empowered, and all the various stakeholders should have a very important role, not merely the district magistrate or certain district officers. No, that would be going against the inclusive governance model that is expected. Now, this was today's current affairs from our side. Hopefully you enjoyed it. It was done in an exhaustive manner so that you understand every aspect of the news and analysis. This is Harpreet Singh from PW OnlyIAS English channel. I hope you enjoyed the analysis. Please read the newspaper. It is very, very important. These videos help you to further analyze, and hopefully you gain some knowledge. All the best. And as we say at the end, Jai Hind.